If we ask ourselves why we learn lab safety, we can find the answer in this lecture. In this lecture, we will discuss together the rules and the safe practices usually used inside the lab. All of lab workers should follow the rules and the safe practices in the lab to avoid any hazards that usually occur from time to time inside the lab. And when we say hazards, we mean risk and danger that usually result from using materials such as chemicals. Chemicals itself can be flammable or explosive, and also gases. It is hazardous for the lab workers. Also, in instruments itself, it can be hazardous for those workers. Also, such as supplies such as electricity, it may be hazardous for those lab workers. So we should follow the rules and the safe practices. We have to remember that. We have to follow the safe practices to avoid any hazards that usually occur from time to time inside the lab. One of that rules: no running, no jumping inside the laboratory, because there is risk for you when you are jumping, when you are running inside the laboratory. Not just for you, also for the equipment, for the instruments, and because when you fall down, you can make another instruments or materials broken down in the ground. So you have to avoid running and jumping, and also to avoid falling down. You have to make the ground clear from oil, from water, and also from reagents that spills from time to time in the laboratory. We have to store the excess materials. Every laboratory have excess materials. We have a lot of kits that you stored in the laboratory. So storing must be away from the pathway and emergency entrance to make the lab workers easy to have a pathway and it is easy for them to emergency entrance if there is any risk or hazards occur inside the laboratory. The second rule: eating or drinking within laboratory is not permitted. As we know, the laboratory is a special area for work, so it is hazardous for you to eating inside the laboratory, and also it is hazardous and it is risk for the test or experiment, because it is very sensitive, and eating or drinking, it may make contamination. So to prevent this contamination, we have to eat and drink in the special area that is usually designed inside the laboratory, a special area such as office, to eat and drink inside it, away from work. we should follow the rules of National Center for Biological Sciences in India. They permit for working just 12 hours a day, just 12 hours a day for one laboratory worker, because the lab needs, or the work in the lab needs more energy, more concentration, so it is safe for you to work just 12 hours a day and not more than 12 hours. You are not permitted to bring animals inside the lab, because there is many hazards can be result when you bring animals in the lab, and just it is permitted for you to bring animals for experiments and for testing something. About the clothes, it is safe for you to wear clothes that is make protection for you when something is built down on the clothes. It is easy to be cleaned up, and also if there is a fire in the lab, it is not burn or easy to be burned by the fire. So it is very important to wear protective clothes in the lab. Mouth pipetting is not allowed inside the lab, because it is very hazardous for you to use this manual equipment, as we deal with many toxic reagents, toxic chemicals. It is not safe for you to use this manual equipment. When we use vacuum system, we find the differences between the pressure from outside to inside. So it is safe for us it is safe for us to be sure about shut down the doors and windows while we are working inside the lab, because others result from time to time when the windows or doors open suddenly. Some glasses or glasswares or bottles containing chemicals or agents fall down on the ground. As you see here in slide number 14, there are many types of signs that usually use inside the lab. It is very important for us to follow these signs, because it talk about hazards that usually result from time to time when we're dealing with materials such as glassware, chemicals, electricity, animals, gases. So we have to follow these signs to be safe in the lab. In slide number 15, there is a sign no entrance. So you should follow the rules, you should follow the signs. If you have a sign on this sign on one door, it is not permitted for you to enter in this area. So you have to respect these rules to be safe inside the lab. Slide number 16. This sign, it talk about toxicity. When we find this sign on a bottle of solution or bottle of powder. We have to be care when we deal with this material because it is very hazardous for us. So if it is powder, we have to wear a mask, and when we deal with solution, we have to be care not to spill down on our body. The following signs make you safe and be protected inside the lab. Slide number 17, the sign attention. It talk about others. When you find this slide, when you find this sign, you have to be attention about risks that you may face in this area. Slide number 18. This slide, this sign, it talks about emergency states when there is hazards of fire or electricity. You have to follow this sign to get out of the lab immediately. Slide number 19, it talks about sources of danger. There are many types of, or there are many sources of danger in the lab. We have deal with a lot of chemicals. We have deal with a lot of instruments. So we have to know all the lab safety and the safe practices to avoid danger inside the lab. Penetration is one of these sources because we deal with chemicals that are toxic solution or powders. We have to wear protective clothes such as lab coat, mask, shield to protect ourselves, to protect our face, our respiratory tract from inhalation of these toxic substances. Also, some laboratory have a compressive gases in some areas, so you have to be aware, you have to be care to deal with this area. Chemicals, it has a lot of types. We have a lot of type of chemicals. Some chemicals are explosive, some chemicals are flammable, so we have to deal with these chemicals with high risk because they result in hazards and result in danger. We have to deal with them with care. And when you are making a solution, also heat is a source of danger as we deal with instruments such as water bath, oven, so that we have to make sure our instruments are processed, they work good in good way to avoid any risk that result from them. Also, light is a source of danger, such as UV. We know that UV is used in laboratories. Also, it is used in the cabinets in microbiology labs to decontaminate the area. So we should deal with care with this slide because it is very harmful for our body. Falling is a source of danger, as I mentioned before in the beginning of this lecture. Slide number 21, lab coat. Lab coat is usually used inside the lab to make protection for your skin and for your personal clothes. Also, lab coat usually It is minimize the spreading of contamination outside of the lab. When we wear lab coat, we prevent our clothes from contamination, so this minimize contamination outside the lab. One of the uses of lab coat is because when we deal with chemicals, some chemicals are toxic reagents or powders. If it is spilled or splash on you, it is safe for you to wear lab coat, and the chemicals will be spilled or splash on the lab coat, and it is be easy for you to remove the dirt one and wear another clean lab coat. Slide number 22, closed-toe footwear. We have to wear, or we should wear closed foot shoes to protect us from chemicals, from light, and to be safe inside the lab. Eye and face protection. To make protection for face and eye, we use many types of materials. Some of that is safety glasses. It protects your eyes from moderate impact. Also, splash Google protects eyes from chemical splash hazards. Also, there is leather Google lens is filter. It provided with lens filter the laser to make your eyes safe. Also, or finally, face shield. It protect your eyes and face from the splash when you deal with some materials. Slide number 28. This slide it talks about the sign that usually used inside the lab, because every laboratory should supply it with eye wash station. It use We use this station when an accident occur to your eyes. You should wash your eyes immediately in this station. Slide number 29, it talks about hand protection. The hand usually exposed to many types of hazards such as heat, cold, cut, abrasion, chemicals. So we have to wear the suitable type of gloves when you're dealing with certain materials inside the lab to make your hand safe. Slide number 32, don't touch. When we find this sign, we should not touch the area, we should not touch the sample, we should not touch the reagents. And when we follow the science and the safe practices in the lab, we stay safe in the laboratory. Slide number 34. This slide talks about washing hands. Washing hands is important before you leave the laboratory and after you finishing your work, to make your hands safe and clean from contamination. Slide number 35. This is slide is talks about respiratory protection as we deal with different types of chemicals, gases, biological materials. Our bodies are exposed and especially respiratory tract exposed to others. So we have to know which type of hazards we deal with it. For example, when we want to protect our respiratory tract from dust, we just need to wear a simple mask to protect our respiratory tract and lungs. But when we deal with serious biological hazards such as COVID-19, we have to wear a full protective shield to protect our eyes, mouth, nose from the infected viruses when we deal with the patients. Slide number 36. This is biosafety cabinets. This usually used in the microbiology lab when we deal with infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, COVID-19. We deal to prevent contamination and to minimize the area of working. We use these cabinets to minimize the hazards and contamination of the lab. Also, when we deal with culture of cell culture, we use this also cabinets to minimize contaminations of these cells.